All right. So this question is asking us that when it comes to vaccinating young children, how do healthcare professionals feel? Now, according to the first answer option, it means that they are mainly reluctant. Healthcare professionals are reluctant, hesitant, they don't really want to do it because of possible complaint from parents. So they are worried that there could be complaints from parents, and that is why they are reluctant. Now, I did not have any problem with this sentence because they do mention here in this particular area that providers, as in healthcare providers, are reluctant to vaccinate. Why? Because they are fearing legal consequences or complaints against them. So it does contain that term about complaints against them. However, the only problem that I have with answer option A is the fact that it mentions that they are mainly reluctant. So it is with the word mainly, which tells me that this is the main reason why they are reluctant. But here I am seeing two reasons, and they have not given the second reason, the complaints against them, more value than the first one. This is why I'm sure that answer option A could be an answer if I do not find a better answer option. However, this is not the main reason though. Now, when I look at the second answer option, it tells me that healthcare providers are dread consequences, which is another term for they are afraid of the consequences. They are afraid of what will happen from when they are not taking parental consent. Now, when they are not taking parental consent, they are afraid that whatever will happen is going to be bad for them. So, this part is actually very much in line with what is given here, that they are fearing legal consequences or complaints against them. So both of these things are bad, and these are the consequences here, right? I know that they are using the word consequences here, they are using the word reluctant here, but that is just to test whether or not you will understand the meaning, or will you just answer or select the right answer here based on what you can match from the paragraph. Remember, when it comes to meaning, we have multiple consequences, more than one kind of consequences, more than complaints. You could also have legal consequences here, which is suggested here, which is why answer option B is a better choice than answer option A. Now, when it comes to lack of knowledge of protective laws in answer option C, this could not possibly be the right answer. Why? Because this suggests that healthcare professionals do not have knowledge of protective laws. But here it is suggested. It's not a fact, but it is suggested that vaccinator providers may not be aware of these frameworks. So they're just guessing. They think that possibly it is possible that they do not have these. Possibly they may not be aware of these frameworks. Which frameworks? Which have been designed to protect healthcare professionals against treating mature minors without parental consent here. These ones, right? Now, they may not be aware of these, not that it is a fact. And secondly, in the last answer option, it suggests that the healthcare professionals feel insufficiently protected by the government. They feel that they are not protected by the government. Now, that I do agree with a little bit because it does mention here. And even if they are aware, first of all, they're not aware of these laws which exist to protect them. And even if they are aware, they might not trust them to offer sufficient protection under the law. But this is a hypothetical situation that even if they are aware, they might not trust. So again, these are not facts that they do not trust them. No, these are not facts, but rather these are assumptions for why healthcare professionals might be reluctant. But here we have a very, very clear reason that yes, they are reluctant because they fear legal consequences, the issues that could arise legally, or the complaints that could happen against them. And it has a lot to do with the protection under the law. It has with something to do with their job profession as well, and it has to do with parents wanting to make complaints against them as well. So it is all of these three things combined. It is not just one, which is answer option A. So the correct answer here definitely should be answer option B. They dread consequences, multiple, various, different kinds of consequences results from this. Now, we did see the word traditionally being used at the beginning of the paragraph. Remember, when we are using traditionally while discussing something, it is usually discussed to kind of talk about the ways in with which things have been happening for a while. For example, on Diwali, traditionally, we are supposed to light diyas and blow off firecrackers, have mithais, sweets, and whatnot, and sit with our parents, right? It does not mean that this is the norm now. So when we use traditionally, it will most of the time indicate or set the stage up for contradiction or different views or something that is not happening now, but this is how it used to happen before. Traditionally, this is something that we did. So if you look at the sentence here, traditionally, parents have been asked to consent for vaccination of their children, including those in high school. So usually, traditionally, this is something that we do, that we ask parents for their consent before we vaccinate their children, even for those children who are high school students. Now, see how they are contradicting themselves when they are saying, uh, when this consent is withheld or not obtained, providers are usually reluctant to vaccinate due to these reasons, concerned about these things. The federal government and some state governments have developed practice frameworks that allow medical professionals to treat mature minors without parental consent. So, the sentences that I want you to look at are going to be these sentences, just these. Traditionally, we asked parents to consent for vaccination, but now we have done this. So, usually, when we use traditionally term in a sentence, especially in medical articles, we are setting up a stage for discussing how things have changed now or how we have a different way of doing things now. So, this is very commonly used in your reading articles. Now, the second word here is consent. They go hand in hand, sort of. So, consent is basically me allowing you to do something or me agreeing for you to do something that includes me as well, for which you need my permission also, right? So, the agreement or permission, which is given by an individual to allow something to happen or to take a specific action. For example, I think you would be very well aware of the consent forms that patients have to sign before they undergo a particular surgery. That means they are allowing that surgery to happen to them by giving their permission. So they are allowing something to happen, or they are allowing you to take the action of doing the surgery on that person. So these words are going to be extremely common in your reading part B, where consent, informed consent, decision making, documenting whatever decisions are taken with consent, without consent, whatever it is, are heavily discussed in your reading part B when it comes to policies. So, here in this question, the writer wants to ask this: what is the primary focus when you're assessing a young person's capacity to make medical decisions? So, they're specifically talking about medical decisions, which actually are being discussed in this paragraph. So, this is perfect for us. But I want you to notice the word primary here. So, they are saying that this is the main aim. Yes, there are secondary reasons as well, secondary aims as well, but this is the main reason for why we are doing what we are doing. So, this is the main thing that we are checking when we are assessing their capability to make medical decisions on their own. Now, if I go by answer option A, it says that what we are mainly checking is their ability, not their ability to check whether the decision is their own. Now, when I read this sentence, this is something very similar to what I read in the paragraph. So, just because something seems similar does not mean I should select it as the right answer. Instead, what I can do, I can go to that sentence in the paragraph which reminds me of this answer option, and then check if the meaning is 100% accurate. So, the sentence that reminds me of this is this sentence. When a young person is requesting a COVID-19 vaccine, the first consideration, the first thing that we consider or check, in other words, is whether they have sufficient capacity to make their own decision. Okay. So, what is the first thing that you're checking? Whether they have sufficient capacity, ability to make their own decision. So this is the area where I read the sentence to make their own decision. But this is not checking that whether the decision they are making is their own or somebody else is doing. So they are playing with words in answer option A. So we are not really checking whether the decision is their own, but rather what we are checking is their ability, whether they have sufficient capacity to make their own decision to be vaccinated. Now, what does this mean? This means that considering whether the young person has the ability, once again, I'm using the term capacity, ability, these are just synonyms of each other, ability and maturity to weigh up the benefits and risks of vaccination. This term now once again reminds me of the last answer option, that is D, to check the benefits and disadvantages. Up until now, I think this is the right answer option because it says to check the benefits and disadvantages of this decision, which makes sense that we are checking whether or not they can kind of assess the benefits and disadvantages of the decision, but not for them. Somebody else is not checking this for them. There's this sort of wordplay that is going on here. Nobody else is actually checking the benefits and disadvantages, the pros and cons of the decision for them, but rather the whole point is, if I am the young adult, what they are trying to check is whether or not I can kind of evaluate, assess, weigh up the pros and cons of the decision that I'm about to make. So that means whether or not I understand or comprehend this decision's implications or consequences, in other words, or the benefits that I'm going to get from this, or the disadvantages that I'm going to get, instead of saying obtaining consent from their parents. Why? Because obtaining consent is something that is not even discussed anywhere in this paragraph. So answer option A, B, and D are going to be wrong. And answer option D is specifically wrong for this reason, because nobody is taking this decision for them. Nobody is checking these things for them. So if any student has actually chosen answer option D, it kind of shows that we are very eager to match words from the paragraph to the answer option. And if you happen to be one of those students, I want you to pause a little when you are doing this and really read the answer option for its meaning. You're soon going to realize that it may not be the right answer, you know, because the meaning has to match, not the words. So, in terms of meaning, this is going to be our right answer option. That is, we want to check whether they understand what are going to be this decision's implications. Now, this particular question I believe to be very easy to answer, even though it is a pronoun question. And remember, whenever you are dealing with pronoun questions, you have mainly two requirements. Number one, you read the sentence which actually contains that particular sentence, which contains that particular pronoun, so that you understand that there is a meaning that you're looking for when you're looking for the noun for this particular pronoun, for example, here. Now, the second thing that I want you to always remember is that when you're dealing with a pronoun, the idea is to find the noun for that pronoun. And if you're finding the noun for that pronoun, the noun, or maybe the pronoun for that noun, you could find it in the previous sentence, but it is sometimes possible it happens that the previous sentence also contains a noun, a pronoun, right? Which does not help you understand the entire meaning because it is referring back to something in this previous sentence. But then again, it could also happen that you are dealing with one more pronoun here in the sentence also. So you could have to, hypothetically speaking, you could have to read this previous sentence as well. But remember, just because a sentence contains a pronoun does not mean I always have to go back and read the previous sentence. No, because if this particular this particular pronoun here does not relate to the actual pronoun that I am looking for the noun of, then it does not matter. As long as my understanding of the sentence is complete, I do not need to go back to the previous sentence here. That's not necessary. That's not mandatory in any way. Now, let's leave this aside and let's try to answer this question. So it basically says, what does this principle refer to? So let me read this sentence here first. Now, according to this, in Australia, this principle, so there is some sort of principle that has been considered by the High Court in Marion's case. So there's a particular case they are discussing, that is the Marion's case, and they're considering this principle. Remember, whenever a court or law considers something, they are giving it validity because court cases or law does not deal with something which is not solid, which does not have any proof, right? So they do not work on mumbo jumbo or the personal beliefs of people, but rather they work on evidence. So they are definitely validating this principle, whatever this happens to be. Let me read the previous sentence for this. So this is sometimes called the mature minor doctrine. Now, I don't know what this here refers to, and I'll go back to that, but there is something that is called the mature minor doctrine. And according to this, in common law countries, so this is a reference to the next sentence actually, because in the next sentence, we are discussing law in high court. So in common law countries, and see here, this information is surrounded by commas, if you see this, right? So whenever information is surrounded by commas in a sentence, that means that is an additional information that has been put there. Now, if I consider this, now this mature minor doctrine has been affirmed, or in other words, it has been given support or validated in the Gillick decision. I don't know what is a Gillick decision, but it is a decision of some kind. And in Australia, this principle, so doctrine could be this principle that it is referring to, because this principle happens to be a singular noun, right? A singular pronoun we are using here. So for this, I need singular noun. So it can't be the Gillick decision because you can't really consider a decision in a decision. That doesn't make sense, right? So it can't be the Gillick decision. Let's turn this away. It can't be a verb. It can't be law countries because these are plural. It can't be common because common is not a noun, but rather here sometimes can't also be considered. So the only thing which is relevant here is the mature minor doctrine, which is actually a singular noun, and it could be considered a principle because it has been affirmed in common law countries. It is also being considered by the High Court. So it could be my answer. But if I have to understand the complete sentence here, what does this refer to? This refers to what did we mean? This is sometimes called the mature minor doctrine. So what is sometimes called the mature minor doctrine? Well, according to the sentence, when you are considering whether the young person has the ability and maturity to kind of weigh, check the benefits and the risks of vaccination, when they have this capacity ability, we call it the mature minor doctrine. Now, this principle, this mature minor doctrine, has been considered by the High Court in Marion's case as well. Which is that Marion's case? I don't know. In the Gillick decision also, it has been validated So the answer actually becomes the mature minor doctrine. Now, the reason why answer option A should be incorrect, because first of all, I've shown you why this B answer option should be the right answer. But in addition to that, they have not talked about parental consent anywhere in the paragraph, just like the last answer. Answer option A is going to be wrong. Here, it is not the common law for legal decisions. Now, some students might think, but ma'am, we did discuss common law here, and here also they have mentioned the common law, and common law is also singular, so it could refer to this principle. But here, they are not using common law as a noun, but rather they are using common law as an adjective. For what? To give me more information about the kind of decisions, sorry, the kind of countries that they are talking about. Well, what kind of countries? Well, common law countries. In these particular types of countries, we have affirmed we have affirmed this mature minor doctrine. But here they are using it as a noun, the common law. For what? For legal decision. Now, another problem I have with the sentence is this term, legal decisions. Why? Because when you talk about legal decisions, let's say that I'm talking to you and you say that, Monica, you seem quite worried. And I tell you, yeah, I'm worried about the legal decisions. Do you instantly think of vaccination? No. Do you instantly think that my legal decisions are related to some medical decisions? No. What do you think? N number of things could come to mind when you think of legal decisions. So, this particular law is not the common law for all the legal decisions in the world. Why? Because they are using collective noun by saying legal decisions, which could umbrella n number of decisions. It is an umbrella term, right? But here we are specifically discussing what kind of decisions? Medical decisions. And all of this is being discussed with regards to COVID-19 vaccine and youngsters' ability to make these decisions, right? So this is why the answer option is also going to be wrong. Now, a decision cannot be considered a principle. They will take a decision based on a principle, based on evidence, but you cannot take a decision based on a decision. It just doesn't make sense. So even when I check the meaning, my answer option B turns out to be the right answer, which is why this is actually the right answer. So make sure in the end, you always replace whatever pronoun you have with the noun that you have selected as an answer and check the meaning of that sentence. If you do that, you will make sure that the meaning is correct and you will 100% be confident about the eligibility of your answer to be correct. Now, here we also see the term decisional asymmetry. This term was being used in the previous paragraph when we were discussing the second sentence that adults, they are assumed to have capacity to make medical decisions when children are not. So children are not assumed to have the ability to make their own medical decisions, which is why adults make decisions on behalf of them. Now, this ability to have this. So this could also be a pronoun question. What leads to a degree of decisional asymmetry? Anyway, coming back to the decisional asymmetry. So decisional asymmetry, decisional is just an adjective here, which tells me what kind of asymmetry are we discussing. Well, asymmetry is me basically saying that there is an imbalance, that there is more shift or more power on the other side between two sides. When I say decisional asymmetry, I mean to say that there is a situation where there is an imbalance or inequality because it is asymmetrical. If something was symmetrical, it would be uniform, it would be similar, 100% same, right? But if there is asymmetry, there's inequality, imbalance, and because we're discussing decisional asymmetry, and that's why in the decision making process, there is imbalance or inequality between different parties, of course. So here they are saying that there is decisional asymmetry in which children need to prove their capacity, but adults are assumed to have that capacity already. So children have to work harder to prove this, but adults don't have to do anything. Just because they are adults, they are assumed to have that capacity. So that is what we call the decisional asymmetry here. The second term that we have here is affirmed. Now, I know that I used the meaning of this term already in the previous paragraph, but I was under the impression that not a lot of you may be aware of this term. So, one more time, let's look at it. Affirm means to confirm or to validate something as true, correct, or valid in other terms. So basically, when I affirm your decision, I say that what you are saying is correct, it's valid, and I validate your decision. So that means I'm providing support to you or acting as evidence here for whatever you are saying. Doctrine, I know you guys must be thinking about this word. You might even be considering, oh, the previous answer was wrong because I don't know what is a doctrine. So just to help you out here, doctrine is a set of principles. It is a belief. It could be a belief also. It could be teachings also that are held and promoted by an organization. Promoted, that means this is something that we do encourage, we do motivate. But as soon as a court of law recognizes it, affirms it, validates it, it becomes a common law. Ta-da. So doctrine is referred to those set of principles. Now, this question asks me what point is made about the youngsters' ability to get COVID-19 vaccination. So, when we are discussing their capacity to make decisions or their capacity to get COVID-19 vaccination, what point are they trying to make? Whenever you get a question about what point is being made, remember that they want you to understand the overall gist or the main idea that they are trying to convey with the help of the sentences, whatever they have written. So, if you get an answer option, which is a minor detail of that overall idea, then that minor detail is never going to be the right answer. And this is the reason why I would not like to go to the answers right away. I would instead go to the paragraph and look at the section which actually discusses the youngsters' ability to get COVID-19 vaccination, their capacity, and read that entire paragraph and kind of see what point, what overall idea is again and again being repeated. Because when I want to figure out the main idea, because it is the main idea, it is bound to be repeated multiple times. Because if something is important, I will keep telling you that something is important. For example, in my videos, you hear me saying that it is not about matching the words directly, but rather it is about matching the meaning of the sentences, right? So for me, that is a very important thing. That's why I keep repeating it. In addition to that, there could also be vocabulary, which kind of highlights again and again that this is something that we really want you to consider or we want you to pay attention to. And this is the reason why look at the paragraph first rather than the answer options here, because you could very easily get an answer option that is correct according to the paragraph, but it doesn't answer the question because the question asks for a main idea, not a small detail. Now, what point is made about youngsters' ability to get COVID-19 vaccination? Their ability is, in other terms, their capacity. And they talk about young people's ability to get COVID-19 vaccination again and again and again throughout this entire paragraph. So I guess I'll have to read the entire paragraph for this. In the first sentence, they say that this person, according to this person, the capacity is very specific to the treatment that you are proposing. So it is not for all the treatments that are out there. It is very specific. For example, they're using such. A young person may have the capacity or the ability to make straightforward decisions, simple decisions that are very easy to make, but they're not necessarily allowed to make decisions for complex treatments. Complex ones, what are they referring to by saying that? Complex treatment, all right? So this is the first thing. First general statement that they have provided is, remember, a main idea is usually general, and then they provide supporting points for that. So this is the general idea that, listen, we will allow the youngsters to make decisions for very straightforward, simple treatment decisions, but when it comes to more complex ones, we don't think it's a good idea. Then we go to the next sentence, which is supposed to provide supporting details, and right on to it says that there is evidence that many young people, a lot of young people have similar cognitive capacity as adults, which would indicate that they should be able to give informed consent. Basically, they should be able to provide their consent for COVID-19 vaccination. Aha. So if they're able to provide their consent to COVID-19 vaccination, so they are not considering COVID-19 vaccination to be a more complex decision. Instead, they think it is a straightforward decision. So we have support for COVID-19 vaccination. That's good. Now, this is important here. They're using conversely. So here it could be an opposite idea as well. So neurobiology is also telling us that adolescence is another word for youngsters, young people, so nothing to worry about there, may have a reduced appreciation of risk. A reduced appreciation of risk is, in other words, saying that they may not consider all the disadvantages, reduced appreciation or reduced acknowledgement. In OET speaking, you may have said this term, I really appreciate you saying this. I can appreciate how you're feeling. So that means you are, in other words, saying, I acknowledge what you're saying. I can understand what you're saying. I recognize what you're saying, right? So they do not recognize or acknowledge the risks. However, they are once again contradicting themselves. So they said one sentence or not supporting this decision. But then again, they're coming back to that sentence. They are once again saying to me that, however, given the known risk, whenever you use the term given the known risk or given something, that means these risks are there. These risks are provided, that because of the risks of known, look at the term, known risks of SARS-CoV vaccination or infection, because given the known risks of this infection outweigh, that means they are far more than the risk of an adverse event to a COVID-19 vaccine, and that the vaccine is strongly protective. This concern against vaccinating young people does not hold ethical weight. So this is in favor of young people getting that vaccination. And what have they used as a supporting evidence, a supporting argument? The second supporting evidence here they have used is that, listen, because we are already aware of the risks, right? The risks which are there for the COVID problem, the COVID infection. And those risks are far more. When they use the term outweigh, they are saying they're far more than the risk or than the adverse. Like, what is the worst case scenario if you get a COVID-19 vaccine? That worst case scenario is still better than the risks which we already are aware of for COVID-19 infection. So we think that obviously you should get the vaccination because it is strongly protective. So whatever concern you had against vaccinating young people, it does not have any ethical value. So we are in favor of that. Another feature, when you use another feature, what are you saying? That means this is the third supporting argument, right? Of adolescence is developing values. So they have developing values, they are still developing them, and planning ability. So it does not have a lot of say in this, but this is another evidence that their values are still developing. Their ability to plan things, it's still developing, right? An example of that is given that current decisions may be regretted later. So they might regret the current decisions that they have made later on. So this is their ability to plan things. It doesn't sound very good, but this is another feature which is kind of going for the benefit of this vaccination. Now, let's come back to the answer options. And before I do that, what are the ideas that I have? The main idea that have here is they started with a very general thing that listen, when we talk about capacity, we mean that it is based on the kind of treatment that you're proposing to the young adults. If it is a more complex treatment, we don't think that the youngster should be allowed to do that. But if it is a treatment which is very straightforward, then they should be able to do that. Then I got three kinds of different evidence for supporting the fact that this COVID-19 vaccination, they should be able to get because we think number one, it is a straightforward treatment option, and they have the same. The specific reason for that was that they have the same capability. Some people, some youngsters, or many, not some, just many. They use the term many youngsters are actually just as mature as the adults. The second evidence that they used was that the COVID-19 vaccine is strongly protective, right? So whatever concern you have against vaccinating children for this particular infection, that goes out the window. So whatever ethical issues you might have, they do not hold any weight. Then the third one is that, these children are still developing their values and their planning ability, but they have given us this one example that current decisions may be regretted later, but that is a part of their developing values. That is why they are calling it developing and not set or rigid values. Yes, that is true. And they did provide some sort of contrary opinion in there, but they kind of took care of that. They resolved that contradictory opinion by themselves when they started with however here. And whatever that they said, that initially they said that the youngsters might not acknowledge all the risk, but that was a very small negative thing. The entire paragraph is basically saying positive things and everything, right? Which is why when I read the very first sentence, they cannot consent to complex treatments. Up until here, I'm very happy because the very first sentence, this is the general idea. They cannot consent to complex treatments. However, they have not really discussed what kinds of complex treatments, and complex treatments were never discussed in the paragraph. But still, this is an accurate detail. Accurate detail could be correct, but does this have to be the main idea? That is something that we still have to consider. Then I actually run into a problem with the answer option A. That is this kind. When it says this kind, it actually refers to the youngster's ability to get COVID-19 vaccination. And COVID-19 vaccination is not considered complex according to this paragraph. So that's why answer option A should not be correct. When I go to answer option B, it says that some young people are just as mature as adults. While that is a small detail or a small evidence, I would say, from this sentence, many young people have similar cognitive abilities. Even that small detail is not correct because they have not said some people, but rather they have mentioned that it is many young people which actually have similar cognitive ability, the ability to think, to process information, but the small detail is also not correct. And the small detail is a supporting evidence, not the main idea. So this is also another reason why answer option B is not going to be correct. Now, look at answer option C. They, by they I mean the youngsters, might regret their vaccination decisions later. Here I have another problem. They are saying that current decisions may be regretted later. Number one, current decisions do not just mean the vaccination decision. They have multiple decisions. And yes, it could also include the vaccination decision. But my question to you is that what they meant when they asked us what point is being made? So, in the entire paragraph, are they trying to make the point that these youngsters will probably regret their decision to get vaccinated? That's not the main idea. So even if somebody thinks that, ma'am, this is a small detail that is correct here, what I am trying to tell you is small details are not main ideas. These supporting evidences, let me highlight what is a supporting evidence. This sentence is a supporting evidence. This sentence is a supporting evidence. Then this sentence again is a supporting evidence. All of these sentences are supporting evidences. What you see highlighted here before the blue lines are, that's the main idea. right? But the main idea could be interpreted in different ways, but it is definitely not that children are going to regret their decisions later. So that is not going to be the right answer for me. Now, it also said that vaccination decisions later, they did not specify that they are going to regret their vaccinating decisions later. For answer option D, I like answer option D the best among the four options because of one thing, that benefits of vaccination are more than their risk perception. So the benefits that you have of the vaccination are far more than the risks which are perceived of for this vaccination, or their youngsters kind of the negative thing that they did mention here, this part tells us that adolescents may have a reduced risk appreciation. So their ability to perceive, to think of the possible risks that could be there of this vaccination, right? They did mention that. Yes, they did mention that. But the benefits of the vaccination are far more. So, yeah, that is one thing that they did mention here. Now, to be very, very honest with you, I don't personally think that this should be considered the main idea because the main idea was here. I feel that this was a big part of a discussion. Yes, you can see the number of lines I've highlighted in green. Yes. So this could be the second big idea that they're talking about, which is why I would go with answer option D, even though I do think it is an additional feature. But this part here also, the third sentence also discusses the same thing. The third sentence also mentions something, their ability to perceive risk, their ability to kind of regret things later on, right? But the benefits are far more. The risks, they are outweighing the risks. So from here till here, we are discussing just this idea, which is why I am willing to go with answer option D to be the right answer. But they're not trying to say that they will 100% forget their decision later on. So yeah, D is the right answer. So once again, we have a main idea question here. And the main idea that we want to figure out is about parental authority when a child is requesting COVID-19 vaccination. So what do we understand about parental authority specifically in this regard? Okay. So according to the clinicians, they're working to develop a three-way relationship. So that means it has three areas, three aspects with children and young people and their parents. So it involves children, young people, and their parents or carers. It could also be the carers in a model of shared decision making, which is why it is being called a three-way relationship. Okay. Now, when a child seeks this vaccination, this is exactly what I want to know about. So this is where my answer begins. To be honest, let us highlight it in a different way. Yeah. So there is a breakdown of this three-way relationship that they mentioned early on. How should parent authority be considered? How should it be considered? They have not yet made a decision on it. Commenters agree, commentators agree that parental authority is not absolute. It's not absolute. Children are not the property of their parents. So far, it is not making a case for parental authority. They're not property of their parents. Parental authority is limited. Look at these adjectives that I'm getting here for this answer. Parental authority is not absolute. Parental authority is limited. Children are not the property of their parents. And whenever they use a colon, look at this. Colon looks like this. This. Whenever they use a colon, it means one thing, that whatever they have said here so far, right? That is an idea. Now, what I'm going to say after the colon, all of this is going to be a supporting argument or an explanation for what I have said before the colon. That is a grammar rule. You cannot change it. So Whatever I have gotten about parental authority so far is only going to be further validated, supported by what I'm going to read next. So, understanding of these kinds of grammar rules also work in your favor sometimes. So, the parents' capacity to make informed decisions for their children, the parents acting. So they are saying that parental authority is limited in three ways. So there are three ways in which we kind of restrict the parental authority. Number one is that their capacity, their ability to make informed decision for their children. So they cannot make all the decisions for their children. We are restricting that. The parents acting in their child's best interest, or at least making decisions that do not harm them. So in this area as well, and the emerging autonomy of the child. So we consider the child as well here, the developing independence or their ability, children's ability to make decisions as well. So far, what I've gotten is parental authority. We're not really happy with you in a lot of regards. It's always decisive? No, it's not always decisive. That outright is incorrect. It's not always decisive. It is limited. So it is not the, first decision that is always going to be considered. It's limited in these ways. Shared decision making. Yes, they did talk about shared decision making here. And here also they are talking about shared decision making. Removes parental authority. Mm, it doesn't say that it removes parental authority, but rather it is kind of a shared authority that is happening there. So I am not happy with the term removes because I do not get that from here. If I say your ability to make decisions on my behalf is limited, it means you cannot make all the decisions, right? And they have told me that the children also have to be included. The carers also have to be included. Their what the child thinks, in the beginning of the decision, that also has to be considered. What this is what it means when they say emerging autonomy of the child. But it doesn't any way indicate that, listen, you cannot make any decision on my behalf. That's not true. Similarly, if your ability to make decisions on my behalf is limited, it does not mean it is completely eliminated, that you cannot make any decisions. So that's why I'm not happy with the answer option B. A and B are eliminated. Parental authority is limited. Yes, it is limited. They have clearly mentioned that it is limited. How exactly? By the child's needs and autonomy. So child's autonomy is child's independence, which is mentioned here as a factor. By child's needs, what the children or what the child needs in that, what is in the best interest for the child, in the child's best interest. So it does cover two of the three things that have been mentioned here. I think it covers all the three because the parental authority is limited. That is, it is limited in three ways, and we have covered most of it. So I feel this is a better answer option than A and B. Let's look at D. The child's request cancels parental authority. This paragraph has nowhere discussed that the child is going to be given precedence or the child is going to be given preference over the parental decisions. They have also not mentioned that if a child makes a request, we don't even know what kind of request, then that is going to cancel the parental authority. So I have a problem with these terms here. The child's request, nowhere mentioned. Cancels parental authority, does not make sense. So yeah, our answer option C is going to be the right answer here. Now, we have discussed that it is not absolute, but what does not absolute mean for us? Well, absolute, when we talk about it, it basically means that it is absolute means it is solid. For example, we use this term to confirm something, right? To affirm something, to solidify our previous statement. So let's assume that you're talking to your friend and you have already told him that you are going to come on this trip with him. And the friend asks you one more time that, so you're sure you're going to come for this particular trip? You say, absolutely. So you are confirming or revalidating or reaffirming your decision for the other person. So when I say it is not absolute, what I mean is something is not unconditional or not fixed, not unchanging. So that means it is subject to change. It can change. Yeah. Emerging autonomy. Emerging is evolving. But what does autonomy mean? Autonomy means the ability of individuals to make independent decisions. Independent decisions, free decisions without any influence, without anybody's permission by themselves. This term was being used here, and this is what I was using as a meaning as well, autonomy for this. Remember, this paper is intentionally using a lot of words from the paragraph in the answer options. Words like parental authority, words like shared decision making, words like, you know, once again, parental authority or words like limited. This is to show you that just because the words are being used in answer options do not necessarily mean they are the right answer or the wrong answer. A lot of the students I have noticed, they go ahead and mark an answer option incorrect. And when I tell or when I ask them, why did you mark this incorrect? I mean, you're right about it, but why did you mark this incorrect? What is the reason? They tell me, ma'am, we marked it incorrect because, you know, whatever words are there in the answer option, if they are also in the paragraph, you know. So it is automatically going to be the wrong answer option because it couldn't be this easy. No. Just because the same words are there in answer options does not mean that that answer is right or wrong. It only means that you should not mark it correct or incorrect just on that one singular basis. What we need you to do is be more skeptical about selecting it to be the right answer or the wrong answer. That means we want you to now very carefully understand the meaning of that sentence and the meaning of the same word in the paragraph. And then check if the meaning is similar. If the meaning is the same, then you check if the same meaning is actually answering the question that is being asked. So that's the idea. That's about it here for these two words meaning. So in this question, the writer is asking us that, um, well, the paragraph is asking us that the writer is using the example. So the writer is using it, the COVID-19 vaccines as an example to do what exactly? Now, according to answer option B, I'm going to first of all start with show how children can challenge parental authority. The problem with this answer option is actually this term, to show how. It does not really discuss a method in which with which a child can actually challenge the parental authority. Also, challenge is a very strong word. It shows that I am actively going against whatever the parents have done. I am challenging their authority, maybe in a court of law, maybe in front of other people, maybe using some documents or a process. But here, all that they are doing, which relates to this answer best, is only this area which discusses that parents, the young person and their parents having different views in this case. If they have different views in this case, it does not necessarily mean that they are challenging the parental authorities, you know. And even if I said that, okay, fine, challenge is fine, they have different views, so they are challenging this. I don't agree with it, but let's go for it. But they are not really showing us how they are actually challenging this. So they are not showing me a method. So that's something that I'm not happy with. Now, for your answer option C, it says that it stresses, the writer is using this example to kind of stress or to emphasize the significance or the importance of medical advice in decision making process. So when you make a decision, they've not even said in medical decision making process, but when you are making any decision, what is the relevance, significance, or importance of medical advice in that? That's what they're trying to show with the example of this COVID-19 vaccine. Now, I've read this entire paragraph. I do not necessarily think that that's the one thing that they are trying to emphasize, highlight, or stress, in other words, which they have used here. Yes, they did talk about medical advice here, that on these accounts, parents refusing COVID-19 vaccination for their children is not in the best interest of the child based on medical recommendations. It's not in the best interest based on medical recommendations, and further could be conceived as harmful by failing to. But here they are not saying that whenever you make decisions, make sure you are considering the medical advice. So they have used the terms from the paragraph, but they have made a completely different meaning in answer option C. That is not endorsed or that is not suggested by the paragraph, which is why it's going to be incorrect. For answer option D, they mentioned that the writer is using this example of COVID-19 vaccine to highlight once again the problem with this, how parents can be wrong about some things. Here, they have not said that this is how you can do this, but rather they have shown us how parents can be wrong about something. Why some people, I understand, would go for this answer option. I would like to say that they're not trying to show that parental authorities or your guardians, they could be wrong about these decisions. They could be wrong about so many things. COVID vaccine is just one of them. That's not what they're trying to say, because when you say some things, it is referring to a broader context of things. It is not just talking about how parents could be wrong about COVID-19 vaccine. I think the idea that they're trying to portray here is that uh, you know the writer is trying to support rather than find faults in everyone, but rather the writer is trying to support the youngster's ability to make decisions. The writer is making arguments so that he can support this particular thing, right? The lines that help me think this is the case is because of this fact that on these reasons or on these accounts or based on these reasons, COVID-19 vaccine parents refusing this COVID-19 vaccination for children is not in the best interest of the child. This is not something that is best for the child. And it could be conceived as harmful by failing to reduce the risk. Fine. We acknowledge that both best interest and harm can be contested values, with the young person and their parents having different views. So far, we have not really gone on the benefit part, but this is where the emerging autonomy of the young person becomes a central consideration, central, main, chief, principal, most important, primary consideration. This is the most important thing that you have to consider. So when you are at a crossroads between two different views, parents, children's, they have different opinions. This is where the emerging autonomy, that means the independence of the child to make decisions about their own life, is central, should be considered. And COVID-19 vaccination, that's when they start talking about the COVID-19 vaccination, seems to be precisely the sort of decision that young people should be able to make along the road to becoming independent decision makers as it is. So it is arguing for that. And then for these reasons, again, using these reasons, parent authority is not sufficient to stop a young person from having the COVID-19 vaccine if they choose so. If they want to go ahead and take the COVID-19 vaccination, parental authority is not sufficient. They are saying that this is something you should consider. So that's why answer option A should be the right answer for me here. Now, one more that was being used in the previous paragraphs is contested values. Now, contested values here is we accept both best interest and harm can be contested. So contested values are clearly beliefs or principles, but contested means that they could be debated, subject to debate. That means they could be debated, There could be a disagreement about those values, belief systems, principles. There could be different interpretations. You might think something else. I might think something else for that, right? Among individuals, that's what we say, that they could have contested values when they said that, you could have different opinions here. Yeah. So, in order to answer this question, because it is a lexical question, it requires your understanding of this meaning of this particular word. So I kind of have to tell you the answer without actually telling you the answer for this. So let's try to understand the meaning of this term without actually knowing the meaning of this term, first of all, before we choose the right answer. And yes, it is possible sometimes to figure out the meaning of the term with the surrounding information, depending on the context that you have. And in any case, the question has asked us that what does this particular term mean in the context of the federal government's policy on COVID-19 vaccines? So, if the government's policy on COVID-19 vaccines is something positive, it means something good. If it is negative, then the meaning is going to be something bad. Now, the federal government has indemnified. So we have used this as a verb here. They have done something to clinicians and implemented, in addition to that, implemented a no fault claims. No fault. Just look at the term no fault. So no fault claims means that it is not your fault. No fault. No fault claims process for the COVID-19 vaccine. Did not understand a lot, but they have done something to the clinicians or for the clinicians. So far, I think that they have done something good for the clinicians because they have mentioned a no fault claims. Let's continue with the rest of the sentence. They're also saying that this applies to vaccine given at any age, regardless of the age, basically, including to young people aged 12 to 17 years. Oh, they have mentioned the years. Therefore, as a result, what happens? Negligence claim. So, what kind of claims here? You have a no fault claim. Here, you have a negligence claim in the event of a vaccine adverse event. So, that means somebody took a vaccine, something really bad happened because of that vaccine. Now, when that happens, you have negligence claims there. So, negligent claims in these kinds of events should not be a reason. They have used very strong language for this. Should not be a reason should not be a reason for what? For to deter or to go away from a vaccine provider, to deter vaccine provider from giving the vaccine. Okay, so we are saying that the government is saying that we want you to give vaccine to the children aged between this to this. So even when something bad is happening as a result of getting that vaccine or giving that vaccine to children, that should still not be a problem for you, a big issue for you that actually makes you think, oh, I don't want to give the vaccination. Why? Because there exists a negligence claims, and the negligence claim exists. Why? Because I'm using therefore. So therefore, it comes directly from this part here, all of this. So it is something good for these people here. Let's see this. The usual practice of documenting the consent should be followed. It is the usual practice. It has nothing to do really with the identified thing because it is the usual practice. It was happening even before this process. Documenting, recording the consent should be followed. If the vaccination provider is aware of the parents' contrary wishes, that means opposite wishes, this should also be noted along with the documentation on capacity and discussion about, okay, what should be documented and then. Now let's come to the meaning. I know it's something positive, it's not something negative. Here they have mentioned in answer option A that clinicians are required to pay for any vaccine related damages. They have talked about a vaccine adverse event, but they have not mentioned anywhere that they should be required to pay. Clearly not the right answer. Clinicians are obligated, it's a very, very strong word, they're obligated by the law to refuse vaccination if adverse events occur. It is the opposite of what they are saying in the paragraph. They're saying that in the case of an adverse event, this should not be a reason for you to deter from providing the vaccination. So this is the opposite. So this is wrong. Clinicians must, it is absolutely necessary to obtain additional, there was nothing additional insurance coverage for vaccine and administration. They must obtain, but this was not even discussed in the paragraph. Clearly, they think that just because you don't know the meaning of the word indemnified, you're going to find it really, really difficult in answering this question. But they don't know that you can actually use the surrounding information to answer this question. I guess that's what they thought. So A, B, and C are wrong. So absolutely, it has to be the right answer, the D answer option, because clinicians are positive word protected from financial liability. Now it because there is a no fault claim, so it is not their fault. There's a negligence claims as well. Now I may not agree with the financial liability part, but I can very clearly agree that answer option A, B, and C are 100% wrong. So they are protected from financial liability for vaccine related claims. Yes, all of these claims are applied to vaccines for the COVID-19 vaccine of an advertisement for a vaccine. So yes, 100% sure that this is going to be the right answer, D. Now, for the last question here, what does the action taken by government and what is the action taken by government? Well, the federal government has indemnified clinicians. I think that is the action they have taken, and they have implemented a no fault claims policy. This is applying to vaccines, negligence claims, and this and that. We have gone over the paragraph, but we have another question from the same paragraph. So what does this action taken by government mean for vaccine providers? So based on our previous understanding of the paragraph, I think we should be able to answer this question. It eliminates the need for parental consent. They mentioned that if the vaccine provider is aware of the parent's contrary wishes, this should also be noted along with the documentation. But the entire paragraph does not really suggest that it is eliminating or it requires this particular thing to happen. So I am sure that this is not the answer. Just because I'm saying that note down the contrary wishes, it does not mean that there is no need for parental consent. They are saying definitely there's a fault claims policy, but they negligence claims as well. But those have been mentioned in the event of an adverse event of COVID vaccine, but not really for, they're not really saying that it completely eliminates the parental consent requirement. So I can't select an answer which is not even indicated by the paragraph. Then they say that providers are facing substantial, that means a large amount or an increasing amount of risk despite indemnification, that even after indemnification, they are facing substantial risk, really, really negative. But they have here that documentation about possible conflict with parents. This is usual. But so far, I did not get any idea where they are still at risk of anything. So I will not go ahead with this. According to answer option C, it says that it alleviates something positive, just like you alleviate pain or worries, it alleviates worries about legal claims. These are all legal claims. These are all legal terms. That much I can tell. No fault claims and what all. Government is doing it, it's all legal. Legal claims related to vaccine administration. Administer vaccination, provide vaccination, vaccination providers. It alleviates worries about legal claims. It makes perfect sense to me. It relieves some of the concerns that we have for these. And yes, they have mentioned the concerns in the event of an vaccine adverse event. 100% with this answer option. Let's see if D is better than this answer option. So according to D, The practice of documenting provides a safety net from parental objections. Now, they have told me that when it comes to documenting the consent should be followed, yes. um, that all the wishes, all of it should be documented. Whatever discussion that was there about conflict with parents or possible conflict with parents need to be mentioned. However, I want you to look at this term called the usual practice, the usual. So they have implemented this now, this no fault claims policy, this negligence claims thing. But the usual term means that it was the process of documenting the consent or possible arguments or the discussion was happening even before that. Moreover, my question is about what does the action taken by the government mean for vaccine providers, and what is the government has done here? The government has indemnified clinicians. The government has implemented a no fault claims policy. That's what the government has done. The government has not just now started the process of documentation. So, answer option D should be wrong because of this reason. The practice of documenting may or may not provide a safety net from parental objections, but this has nothing to do with the action which is taken by the government. So, my right answer option is going to be C. Now, before we end the video, let me actually tell you the meaning of the term indemnify. So, when we talk about indemnify, it basically means to compensate or to protect someone, to compensate financially, to give them money, or to protect someone from financial loss or legal liability. Legal liability, they could be given a notice, they could be brought to court, or financial loss that they might actually suffer due to an action they have taken. So it actually talks about both of these things. So, which is why when we said that here, two of the answer options were related to the money part, it actually did make sense a lot. So, if anybody knew about the word indemnified, they would automatically consider that A and B are nowhere near related to that. Actually, it could be because answer option A is also saying something about paying. So, somebody could think of that, but because it was not in a negative sense, you could clearly eliminate all of these answer options and it was something positive. So this could be done. But remember, it could get more tricky if you had two positive answer options about the meaning of the term indemnified. So you have to focus really hard on what is given in the paragraph as an understanding of this term. Now, I hope this video was helpful for you in understanding how we can answer certain questions. If I wanted you to take away a few points from this video, those would be number one, uh, depending on the kind of question, you would have to read a certain part of the text or you would have to read the entire paragraph. And what you understand or what you take away from that paragraph is also going to be related to the kind of question it is. For example, in main idea questions and where we are making a point about something, we want to look at information in two ways. Number one, which information is a point of view, a perspective, a stance on things. It's a general idea, and which areas or which sentences are actually the supporting details, the supporting evidence, the supporting arguments for that idea, and which are in the opposite direction of that idea. That is going to help you a lot in identifying the main idea, in making sure that you do not select a minor detail to be the right answer to a main idea question. Secondly, always check the meaning of the answer options when you are also checking the meaning of the words in the paragraph. And even if the meaning of the answer option is the same as the paragraph, please check if the question is actually asking for that meaning, or could that be the right answer to that question as well. And as you can see, vocabulary has a great part in making sure your comprehension is correct, which is why I have made it a point to make sure that you get to see a lot of vocabulary words here. But in order to improve your vocabulary, you need to read a lot of articles. So please do that. Thirdly, grammar also plays an important role here. So anybody who is already aware of what does a colon do, what does commas, like how do commas work in a sentence, how do we get supporting points by using linkers like additionally, another feature, fortunately, and how do we get opposite or contrary ideas by using however or conversely. Those students are already at an advantage. They are going to have a far more better understanding of the paragraph than a student who does not know the usage of these linkers. So make sure transition words or linkers are the areas which are clear to you 100% because those are grammar concepts for which you don't need to read a lot of grammar, a lot of medical articles. You just can understand them by going through them once or twice. So these three things together, when they come, that's how you are able to understand the meaning of a paragraph clearly. And that's why you would be able to eliminate answer options. And just because first half, second half, or certain part of an answer option is correct, does not mean that entire answer option is correct. You have to check the meaning of the entire answer option and not just a certain section of that answer option. And that's about it. So if you like this video, like, share, and subscribe. And do tell me what kinds of videos you would want to see next. I would try my level best to make them for you. Remember, reading is not the area we focus on. We also provide writing classes, speaking classes, as well as listening classes as well. I personally love writing, so if you would want to see something about writing, do let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching.